of Ankabut and Internet 2, Janet, these and Arab states, REN also, that there is a requirement to enter the internet, which is 1 gigabit per second. So we need to have gigapops, gigapoints of presence in order to make this happen. When you say Internet of Things, you want to make sure that there's no disruption. You want to make sure that it's secured. You want to make sure that every element is addressed. So we look all these together, Internet of Things in Internet 1 will be semi-successful. But if it goes into the Ankabut, and Ankabut right now is only for research and education, I hope in the future, Internet 1 and Internet 2 or Ankabut will go together and give me requirements. And when this happens, then we are officially announced that we are a part of that Internet of Things. And it has to be ubiquitous Internet of Things. That means it has to be very wide, it has to be very broad. Anything you need from your palm of your hand or a device you have, it could be embedded in your Pandora, whatever, that it can actually communicate with that element and give the commands and control that the person wants to make it happen. Then you will have an ubiquitous Internet of Things. I think there are lots of things to talk about it, but I think I'll leave it to others. They are more technical than I am, and I'll leave it to you, please.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Issa. First, I'd like to define the internet of what we refer to as the Internet of Everything. I understand that Gartner actually calls it the Internet of Things. We define it as simply the connection between people, things, and data. And things here is the definition of anything you can think of, including the chairs we're sitting on, the light bulbs that are lighting this room. And the linkage between people, data, and things is through process. So it's about the notion of taking the internet, which was built out over the last 35, 40 years, to connect people and provide a platform for education, e-commerce, interconnections, and ultimate improvement and efficiencies in the processes that we deal with, to now what we call the next phase of the internet, where 99% of things around us on this globe are still unconnected. We've only connected 1% of what is virtually possible to connect. And the reason we want to do this is not because we just want to do it for the sake of doing it, is because we believe there's a huge societal benefit and a huge economic benefit. We've assessed this benefit to be in the neighborhood of $19 trillion over the next 10 years. And if you think of $19 trillion, it's like adding the United States gross domestic product and Germany and Britain on the planet, which would be a huge, huge advantage. But the benefit goes beyond that. It's not just about the economic benefit. It's also about changing society. There's projections that by 2050, the average lifespan of a human being could be 148 years. That is a tremendous breakthrough in impacting the human race, which continues to revolve around anywhere between 40 and 80 years of average life expectancy. It's about improving the quality of life and making sure that as we go through this journey on this planet, whether it's 40 years or 80 years or 148 years, as some project, we ultimately experience that in the best, happiest way possible. I will elaborate later on, Doctor, on what really is the detail and what is the infrastructure that enables the Internet of Everything.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. No, I would like to support what Mr. Rabia said, that what Gartner published in December 2013. that it forecasted that the Internet of Things, which excluded PCs, tablets, and smartphones, will grow to 26 billion units installed in 2020, representing an almost 30-fold increase from 0.9 billion in 2009, according to Gartner, said that the Internet of Things product and service suppliers will generate incremental revenue exceeding $300 billion, mostly in services in 2020. It will result in $1.9 trillion in global economy value added through sales into diverse end markets. Please.
One of the things that, hello? One of the things that excites me about the Internet of Things is the ability, for example, to empower entire continents that are not quite there yet. For example, in Africa, I think there's a tremendous amount there. And I'm excited to hear more about what Cisco has to say about the backbone of putting all of that together. Let me talk for a second a bit about the software side and the wetware side. What I've seen in the past is I think some of us have seen cars that as you drive down the road, a problem happens, and then the car has the ability to talk to a satellite in one way or the other, that sort of thing. Not quite yet via IP, but that'll all happen. I think all of us have also seen very good ideas that aren't executed as well as they should be. Bear with me on this. What does it mean to have each element of your home, each element, clothing, all of those things, IP enabled? Because we can do that now. With IPv6, we have the ability to do a tremendous amount of addressing. But IPv6 is a bit more than that. IPv6 gives the ability for routers to behave better. Instead of traffic being fragmented and taken care of at the router, it's the individual unit that does it more. And the router does its job of just routing rather than actually doing that processing like it did. So IPv6 will be a major part of that. But one of the things that interests me is what does it mean for programming to be able to program those things that work well? Because I think all of us have seen things that were supposed to work really well, whether it be an app on your mobile phone, something on your desktop, or whatever, that actually failed in one way or the other. And how well are we able to program for the Internet of Everything? How well are we able to do that? Another thing that is very interesting to me, I've done a lot of work in the security area. And one of the things that is interesting to me is how secure will all of this be? From the point of identity theft to the idea of whatever institution, whether it be a government or a company that goes rogue or what have you, in what way can all of that information that is gathered together over the backbone, over good programming, over IPv6, but as that data is gathered, how does it get used? In Europe, there's been discussion about the idea of the right to be forgotten. You know, that you get your ID online and then, well, maybe we can take that back. I don't know. That seems awfully idealistic to be able to do that. But my point is when it comes to the Internet of Everything, who's gathering that data? How are they going to read it? What does that mean for us as society? Because it can mean wonderful things, very interesting things. But it could also be used in different ways that maybe we don't anticipate or maybe some people have anticipated. So I wanted to get a little technical with that, but I also want to talk about some of the sociological elements that could be involved as well. There you go.
Okay, good. Thank you. I think we'll ask the audience to ask questions, but before I have one question. I think here you got the point that IPv6, it was the trigger of the Internet of Things, but IPv6 without a backbone or without an infrastructure, okay, and high bandwidth and wireless or and lease line, this Internet of Things could not happen. That's where I think here the Internet too played a big role to come to this reality.
I think that's a major element, and I also think that now that software-defined networking has come in and is coming into its own a bit and the ability, in the same way that with virtualization you have the ability to separate a hardware machine from software and do some interesting things with virtualization. IPv6 combined with software-defined networking, the ability to again decouple hardware from administration of that information, of the delivery of the information, and signaling. I think the fact that you have all of those elements working together makes it very possible for the Internet of Everything to really become something, to become something really unique.
Good. It's a paradigm shift of the
Big time.
technology.
Yeah.
And we should assume our responsibilities as CIOs. What the big role here of the CIO to play to implement the Internet of Things. It could be in university, it could be a school, it could be in the company. Okay, what's the big role that the CIO has to start now to implement the Internet of Things in his domain? Dr. Isa.
Well, I think it seemed like the CIO shouldn't do anything because we are talking about cloud computing. And cloud computing means that one day it will come that there's no infrastructure in any organization. Every person is connected wirelessly to that cloud to get whatever he or she needs. So cloud computing is the one that gives you infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service, and any kind of services as a service. Nowadays, CIOs should work hard to put the awareness in the society that this is going to happen. I'm sure that CIOs will be something of the past in the future, but there will be people in IT just to implement the connection to the Internet. So cloud computing and this high speeds, wireless networks, all these together will make Internet of Things happen. But more than that, we started at the beginning communication person to person, and it went to person to machines. Now it's going machines to machines. That means if we want to plan for Internet of Things to happen, it should understand the person through the devices to do whatever service required in whatever place it is, wherever it is. So machine to machine is where people, if I go into my office, automatically there are connections between machines that they'll know I'll be at that time, and my tea should be ready at this time, and this, whatever it should be at that time, especially things physical. Other than that, services, you can do it anywhere you are. So machine to machine is the future that Internet of Things will be a big part of it.
Mr. Rabi.
I'd like to add here to Dr. Raisa and Dr. Iyad that today the CIOs are actually working for technology to make sure technology delivers the value we expect of it. I would say that the future advice for CIOs to make sure technology works for them. And there's a big shift today where you have, potentially if you look at the population of CIOs, you could divide it in two halves, potentially more, but majorly two halves. The first half are those who are sitting down in the basement, keeping the network up and the data secure and the applications updated and the accounts given to the new employees or deleted from employees who leave. The other population of the CIOs are those that are not chief information officers, they are chief innovation officers. And this is what the future needs. We need to develop and educate and produce innovation officers that join both the private and public sector. And from their understanding of technology and their knowledge of what can be virtually possible with technology, they come up with innovations that make our life secure, our life easier, that open up new markets for us and develop a system that allows the university, the business, the company to operate better, to innovate more, to produce better, and to operate more efficiently as well. So instead of CIOs being slaves to technologies, they need to enslave technology and really make technology work for them and produce for them. And that can only be done through a discipline of studying technology and understanding the potential of technology. The last 35 years of internet will be dwarfed by the amount of innovation that we will see in the next 10 years. And I'm intentionally avoiding getting into the bits and the bytes and talking about the different technologies that are used today to enable this. Although I come from R&D and I actually have done a lot of hardware and software development myself to enable bringing the internet to the mobile world. But it's not about the technologies that help us get there. It's about the solutions and the value. So CIOs need to think about what are the key business challenges and hurdles, and then translate that into actionable solutions through the use of technology to bring that value back to their organizations.
Good. Dr. James?
You know, yeah, in some ways, I mean, are there some people out there when it comes to if there's a typical CIO, it's all about taming the technology. It's also about finding a way to make sure that there's a certain amount of control. And with the Internet of Things, if innovation does be, and I agree with you, it does become that so important. So that you're saying the CIO is going to have to change his or her way of thinking radically. Wouldn't you agree? Because that's the way I see
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are some of the changes you think that would be the biggest? Because to me, most of good CIOs I know will basically say, hey, James, great, okay, hold on there. Let's, calm down, bring it back just a second, and let's be very methodical about it, right? That's what most operations type I know, and bless them for that. But how can you do that, be systematic in the face of all the innovation? Does that mean there's a fundamental change that needs to happen, or is it?
I would say there should be a cultural change in the nature and the role of a CIO. I think the folks that we're used to, the typical CIO that we're used to is process-oriented, systematic, very risk-averse because their job is on the line. They have to make sure the network works, the systems work, the software works, and so on, and it's highly secure and protected. Otherwise, they won't have a job.
Right.
I believe these are the IT execution arms of the future. The CIOs of the futures will have a seat at the board, will have a seat at the leadership of the organization, whether private or public, and they will be decision makers. In fact, they will be the catalyst of making sure the organization grows and succeeds. And they will be very, very unique because they need to have a full understanding of the nature of the business, whether it's a government service providing things to citizens, or whether it's a bank or a private organization that's producing certain services or products to sell. They need to combine the understanding of the business with the understanding of technology, so they become a translator. They become the actual dictionary that takes